Hello, welcome to everybody. This is going to be a virtual tour of Mapperton Gardens and I hope it'll become for you a physical tour quite soon. I'm Caroline Sandwich and John and I have been running the gardens for the last 30 years. And though much of the gardens were done by my father-in-law, we've enhanced them, changed them, expanded them and generally brought them more into the 21st century. And this little garden, the front courtyard, is one I very much love. It has fine herbaceous plants like phlox and bocconia, and at the moment catmint in profusion. And then there are some fine shrubs around the wall, the very fine Buddleia salvifolia there, a lemon verbena there, which we use for tea, of course, all the time. And over there, in flower, is a hydrangea seamanii, which is actually a thug and has to be cut back all the time, and a pretty rose up the church there. In the summer, of course, we sit here in the afternoon, in the evening, and look out across the to the west, across the field there, past the walnuts, and beside the two stable blocks. I love this area. I think it's fine. And we put in that magnolia there, which, because it had died, the old one, from old photographs. And these are the exceptional 4 wisterias. And over to the left is a pear tree, which I put back in as it had gone. So we've both changed the garden and restored planting that had been there in the 20s. And now we're going to go on to the main lawn. And we're very lucky in these gardens to profit from the plantings of previous generations. We, in a sense, are the custodians of these gardens and the custodians of such wonderful plants that have been shrubs and trees have been planted before. For instance, look at that wisteria there with its huge gnarled trunk. These Viticella, Clematis Viticella, were planted obviously by us. They're actually flowering about a month early because of this year, but they add colour when other plants have gone. One that I'm particularly fond of is Polish Spirit, which is that one there. It's a real goer. Polish Spirit's a real goer. Goes on, and that's Étoile Violette. And then we go on past this wonderful magnolia to the next great wisteria, which is here with an enormous trunk. I suspect it was planted in the 19th century by the Comptons who lived here then. Huge, great thing. The trunk is as beautiful as the flowers. And so onwards, past more of these Viticellas. I got a bit carried away about planting Viticellas a few years ago to try and give colour after the magnolias have flowered. If they do flower, because often they don't. Yet another one. And then I think we can cut across here to the edge of the lawn. And I'm walking across to the point at the far side of the lawn where garden visitors first get their wonderful view of the Fountain Court, which is one of the glories of this garden. Over there, and we will be walking into it, but this view from above is great. What is interesting about the topiary, of course, is it's a mix of yew and box. I mean, most topiaries are either box or yew. It's interesting to have these varied bushes. And when we get down there, you'll see that from time to time we really do have to cut them back or they become like monsters. And now I'm going to walk down the steps to the Orangery through a bower of Rhomnea coulteri, the Californian poppy, here, which has just come out in time for this tour. And we're now coming to what's called the med bed, which is Mediterranean, facing south, very warm. This is Phlomis italica, and like every gardener, I'm saying you should have seen it a week ago. And in this bed there are other salvias and tree peonies and and a handsome buddleia. Now we're coming to the Orangery, which was built by my father-in-law, or finished by my father, built by him and finished in 1969. And this is Lola, who's just had 5 kittens. Shush. We'll go into the Orangery in a second. It's an interesting structure. It's never been very satisfactory. It's leaked from the day it was finished. We have, on the other hand, got some wonderful plants in it, and it isn't just, of course, an orangery. We've put in quite a lot of exotic plants. And then, of course, in order to do it, my father-in-law changed the pergola, which we'll look at a bit later, and put in this long border down to the centre of the fountain court. Shall I go in? Oh, Lola, stop it. I'm coming into the Orangery now, which is great, past a sparmannia, past a curious plant called Ibosa riparia, or Tetradenia riparia, and towards the centre of it. This Orangery, even though it's been quite a hassle to look after, has provided the most wonderful place for our tender plants. And of course the oranges come back in here in the winter. And here's a hibiscus, looking really glorious. Oops. And then and that's a little pomegranate there. And I really want to point out to you these birds of paradise, which only come out every 2 or 3 years. Absolutely lovely. Dotty plants, South African. And then as we go along, we've got a rose up there that comes out in March called Niphatos. It's one of the old tea roses. And then as we go along, tree ferns. And what surprises everybody, including us in the garden, is this plant here with its flower up there, which is actually a begonia, believe it or not. And then I think we'll go out this way. And we're now going to walk along what's called the red wall border. It's quite a good, narrow border, past an absurd phlomis called Russelliana, past a lot of yellow plants for some reason. This jasmine has just come out. And along past Cicericium, one of our favourite plants in the garden. Past the tulip tree. I don't know why my father-in-law planted a tulip tree here. It's miles too big, but there we are. It's there. And there's its tulip. There. And these borders are basically herbaceous borders with hostas and geraniums, sedums, daylilies. What else can I see at the moment? Monkshood, astrantia, which we love, and campion, lychnis, penstemons, and onwards until we get to the centre of the fountain court, which is here. And here we can look right across the fountain court at the octagonal pond in the middle. This area of the gardens was planted by the previous owner, Mrs. Labouchere, in the 1920s in an Italianate form, and relies on its charm from this topiary, the water, the stonework and the grass. And it also relies on a huge amount of tender loving care to keep it as it is. And then these are the grottos where Mrs. Labouchere used to paint. Let's go down into the centre of the fountain court to this wonderful octagonal pool and the bushes around it, because it shows really what Mrs. Labouchere intended, to have the whole focus of the eye go down onto this fountain in the middle. At the moment we've got no fish in there, but I'm going to do something about it, or somebody I hope will do something about it soon. And then we're going to walk into the pergola, which is here, which is huge and long and always needs TLC. Actually, the whole garden always needs TLC. And now I'm coming into the pergola, which is pretty large, twice the size it was, because my father-in-law moved half of it when he put in the Orangery. And it's wonderful, full of roses, vines, clematis, including this absurd clematis summer snow that I put in, which is ramping. And it even has our head gardener, Steve Lannin, in it, starting the summer prune of the wisterias. Hi, Steve.
Good morning.
How are you?
Very well.
Well, you're better off if you're in the shade here.
Absolutely. Really warm day today.
This is a major job, is it?
It is.
I mean, of course it is.
Yes, absolutely. There's two white wisterias on the pergola here.
Floribunda and chinensis.
Indeed, yes. And they all require a summer prune to take off the long growth like we have up here.
What do you do them to, 6?
Usually to about 4.
4, eh?
4, yes, indeed.
It's quite cut back.
It helps to keep the shape and the form, which is so magnificent.
Yep. Well, it's all right. I mean, actually, that bit's not magnificent at all. It's fallen over.
Yes.
And then there's that thing there whose name I can never remember.
Oh yes, the common name is a sausage vine.
Sausage vine. Well, can you get rid of most of the sausage vine?
Yes, it's taking over a bit and growing through the rows here.
And it's also not terribly interesting.
No.
Does it flower?
It can, but it doesn't seem to for us.
It doesn't for Mapperton.
No,
I know.
Not.
On the other hand, that euonymus there is just wonderful.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Stunning euonymus. Let's go and see if the mulberry tree is actually producing fruit this year, because it should be showing it by now. It's a fantastically old and wonderful tree. Really great.
It's a wonderful shape in the winter as well.
Well, I know. Have we got any?
The lawn.
Are we going to have any? Yes. Yes, look. Yep. White. Do you see? But coming. And then what? And then we pick them by shaking the tree and picking them up from the ground. And then this is one of the best views for looking at the two pools down here through this amazing euonymus. And this is the swimming pool where we swim with the frogs and the newts and the toads and everything. And the lower one is the golden orf pool, where also the water lilies have cut adrift and are so enjoying it. We're now walking into Daniel's garden, which is a shady woodland garden, but before we get there, there's this magnificent palm here, which has been here for ages and ages, and then another rather odd-looking tree. And once we get in here, this was planted by Colonel Daniels, and it provides wonderful shade and shady plants, particularly in hot summer weather like this. We're going to the round pool now. Whoops. The round pool and this little garden is a secret garden where you can sit and look out at the landscape and get a sort of sense of calmness and serenity, we hope. This woodland garden is particularly wonderful in the spring because all these are camellias of various sorts, anticipation, donation, and a number of others. including a wonderful deep red one that we have. And as we go on down, we're heading towards the Arboretum, which is the lowest level of the garden and the wildest. But it is an arboretum of such distinction that societies do come and look at our trees. And when we go on down here, we're going past these huge pines which glow pink in the evening sun. And this particular border just here, you may think is a little odd in its planting, but it's called the deer-proof border. It's all plants that deer won't eat. Euphorbia, Formium, Caryopteris. And now we're heading for the top of the gully, the top of the Arboretum. This is the lower pool, which has the goldfish, the golden orf, and the water lilies. The water lilies used to be in tanks, and you can see they're symmetrical. But three sets of water lilies decided to cut loose and are flowering so much better, free of the constraints of their tanks. Further up are those standard roses, and up beyond that is the swimming pool that you saw earlier, and the euonymus. Walking into the top of the Arboretum is a joy. It's magnificent. It was planted by my father-in-law in the 1950s and 60s, and of course a lot of the trees are now very mature, like this pocket handkerchief tree and the tulip tree, and this thing, whose name none of us know at all. And then we move on, but there's a little cursis, little Judas tree that I planted, and a malus, and I'm trying to keep the some of the planting up where my father-in-law either had trees that have died or we wanted to plant different ones. And then, of course, he planted this metasequoia, Glyptostroboides. And this is a Parotia persica, which goes a sort of purple colour in the autumn. Most people prune the bottoms, but I've left it because I think it looks so magnificent and it's good for children to play in. And as we go past, there's another little sorbus, and we're just going to come to these two cornices here, these variegated cornices. And what is so extraordinary about these two is one comes from the New World and one comes from the Old World. And this one here comes from America, and that one up there comes from China. And then on the other side here is another Cornus chinensis, again from China. Well, this is the far end of the Arboretum, and as I get older I'm so relieved that we're putting in more benches. And since a lot of people are my sort of age, it's really great. In the old days, of course, I galloped up and down these things. There are some quite fine trees here too, very good acers, this one and that one. And I'm now going to the bench. Phew! I'm now coming out of the Arboretum, and I'm going just round the corner here to one of my favourite views of the garden, which is on this path, and then I can look right across the garden there to the pine trees, to Daniel's garden, to the goldfish pond, to the swimming pool. And we're now in the front courtyard of the house, but I'm going to introduce Steve Lannin, head gardener, been here
4 years.
4 years seems like it's eternity. And the garden has improved enormously under his firm but kind tutelage. He's not the only gardener here. Tell everybody where you come from and how you managed to get here and all that stuff.
Well, so I've been here, as I say, about 4 years now. Prior to this, I worked for a garden designer called Arnie Maynard at his house in Wales, which is an orange Renaissance tower house surrounded by topiary. And prior to that, Sudeley Castle in the Cotswolds, which is sort of similar size but a completely different feel.
So we're now in the front courtyard of the house. House behind you. It's a very good time to see the gardens. This is spring, and the Clematis montana, the pink Clematis montana, is out over there. A white Clematis montana is coming out, and it's called Wilsonii, and it actually is scented. But actually, Steve, we've let it go so high up the house you can't smell it, unfortunately. It's round the corner there. And then what else is out? Lovely honesty. We like to have honesty. It's a very important virtue. And it's something that, you could do with more of in politics these days. And then those are spurges over there, Euphorbia wolfenii.
Wolfenii,
Do you think
yes.
they are wolfenii?
I think they are, yes.
Just about. And then up there is a Buddleia. Salicifolia, which we only managed to prune the bottom half where we could reach. And this year we're going to have to get up on ladders and really prune it there. What else?
It's got quite large now,
I know. Well, I'm going to watch you doing it, Steve.
Thank you.
Not at all. What else have we got in here? What about that? Euphorbia mellifera. Is that right?
Yeah, a mellifera is a really good one for us because it's honey scented as well at this time of year. It's
really good. And actually, more or less our only lilac is out. That lilac has a name so extraordinarily long, and I did once write it on it, and then by mistake, when I was cutting some branches off, I cut straight through the label. And I'm afraid to say I haven't been bothered to do it again because it's so long. And that's very sweet scented. Now, then that's a late camellia. When my father-in-law lived here, Victor Montague, who bought the house indeed in 1956, he used to sit in the library there without any of these enormous euphorbia spurges, and he always looked out at that camellia over there, which is called Adolphe Audusson. Steve, where should we go next?
I think we should probably go and have a look at the wisterias, which are just beginning to come out.
Okay, so we're going to go up to there. Steve, this wisteria is just beginning to look absolutely wonderful. We've got 4 wisterias along this wall. How do they go?
Floribunda, Chanensis, and Floribunda again.
And we want to look at that far Floribunda, which is not at all Floribunda and is actually dying, and we need to get another one. But it's always the Floribundas that come out first. And they don't have quite as long racemes, long, what do you call them?
Sort of flower
stalks as the sinensis, the Chinese wisteria. And I've always been told, and I think it's right, that Japanese Floribunda, Japanese wisteria twines to the right, and Chinese wisteria
twines to the left. Yes, it does. Yeah,
that's correct.
Yeah, it actually does. Yeah,
it's unbelievable that that's the case, but it is apparently. And it smells divine and it looks divine. Should we go and look at the other Floribunda? And you can see they're longer and more delicate. These. Can't remember which smells better.
Oh, good question. I think the Floribunda actually.
Yeah. And then we get to here, where we hugely admire that enormous stem, twining up and up and up and up and up and going over the door and all the way along there, dead.
Yeah, all this really lovely old limb over the top is all dead.
But we are going to keep it.
Oh, we're going to keep it until it falls apart because it looks wonderful despite the fact that it is unfortunately deceased.
It's late wisteria. On the other hand, this is okay, this bit here, and we're going to plant another one there.
Yes, absolutely.
And from here, of course, you get this wonderful view across the fields. It's interesting that the walnut trees are late. Are they always late, Steve?
They do seem particularly late, although they are always one of the last, I think.
Are they?
Yeah, they do seem to be. But this year we have had a very late spring. I think we are probably 2 weeks behind where we were last year.
Really? And from here, we're going to walk right across the lawn, right to the far end, where we're going to look down on Steve's red tulips. When you first came, I said, I like bright scarlet, if not orange tulips in the garden, and you thought...
Yeah, I was a little bit unconvinced, if I'm honest.
Totally, actually.
Yeah, prior to being here, the sort of idea of having just bright red didn't really appeal. And initially, you let me have my own way, I think, in the first year. And I think I planted... What did I plant? I planted something else.
Hideous deep purple ones or something that didn't show at all and did nothing.
No, well, they were very classy, I thought. But
But I'm not classy, and this garden is classy in its own way, which is...
I think what I found actually is those bright red highlights, especially this time of year where the garden is very green, helps to draw the eye through.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially in a garden like this where your eye needs to travel around from an elevated point, and actually anything that's sort of classy and subtle, like my lovely dark tulips, just didn't really work.
And these tulips here, which are all random, I decided it was time we had something which was not classical, but rather more of a sort of romantic way of planting tulips. So I planted them all randomly at the end here, so that people down by the pools should see them. And it should look different, actually, different.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting this important part of England's heritage by becoming a patron at mappertonlive.com.
So we've now come to the front of the Orangery, and we're looking both at the Orangery itself and at this extraordinary avenue of crab apples. Would you like to talk about the crab apples, really?
Well, I can't tell you when they were planted, of course, because you planted them.
I planted this avenue of crab apples for two reasons. One was that this Orangery, which don't delude yourselves, it's 18th century. It was built in 1968 by my father-in-law, and it stood there, and then the rest of the garden was there, and there was no linking between the Orangery and the fountain court, so I planted these to kind of give a link. And really I planted them for the winter, not for the summer. I planted them because they have little tiny beautiful red, well, they're crab apples, I suppose. Yeah. Red sentinel?
Yes.
And a garden visitor yesterday told me more about it. She said they're the only crab apple that keeps its crabs on the branch, and so they provide food for the birds all through the winter. But I planted them because the little red crabs look lovely against these yew bushes in December.
But last week we were in this bed lifting and dividing some of the perennials, and the sound from the bees was absolutely extraordinary.
Can you hear it now?
You probably can if you walk down into it.
Oh, well, we'll walk down in a minute.
Yeah.
Oh, listen. Oh, it's wonderful. Can you hear? Steve, can you hear the bees?
Oh, they sound
absolutely stunning. I must say the pergola is so beautiful, isn't it? And I think your pruning has been absolutely magnificent of all these roses. Which was the worst rose here to prune?
The worst one, actually, is we're heading towards it now. It's just on the right-hand side.
This thing here?
Yeah.
Do you think I should just take some more off it?
Well,
I mean, if I were just to... Steve, what could I take off? I really don't think I can.
This one takes me about 3 days to prune.
This thing?
Yeah, it's absolutely huge, and it reaches right across to the other side, and it turns into a real nest every year.
Really?
So this one is probably one of the toughest ones in the garden.
Well, I'll tell you what, should we take it out?
I'm not sure.
If it's doing 3 days. I mean, it seems a bit of a waste to spend 3 days on American. I bet it's American pillar.
Yeah, it could well be. It is a rambler that does grow particularly hard.
I mean, for all of you in America who are listening to this, we are very fond of America, but we're not fond of that rose American pillar, which is a rather coarse pink and rather too big. And then, of course, we've got more wisterias here, haven't we?
Yes,
we've got the 2 white ones, white floribunda there.
Yes, a floribunda.
And white chinensis.
Yes.
There.
Just there.
There, yep. So, and those are rather wonderful. And of course, in the spring like this, before there is a cover of leaves from the roses, we're able to have all these hellebores of different colours all the way up here, and all these...
And lots of epimedium.
And what is the real trouble with epimedium?
Well, the balance is the right time to cut back the leaves. So you cut back the leaves in February time-ish, just as the flowering stalks are starting to come through. And if you leave it too late, you end up having to cut around all the stems, which
and
can
it takes
be a real
ages.
pain. And we've got hundreds of them.
And the reason we have hundreds of them is because I like them and I've put them in everywhere. And then they grow too much, and so we then have to take some out and put them somewhere else. And this is your favourite vine, or is it my favourite vine? Or should we take it out?
Yeah, it's there are some plants that are just a bit too much of a thug, and this one looks wonderful for a couple of weeks of the year, and then the rest of the year it smothers everything. And so I've taken to hacking it back really hard every year, but I think in the long term it may well not be one that stays.
Does it flower?
I've never seen it flower.
Oh, well, let's take it out. So really this pergola is really great. And from here, we're going to turn around, aren't we, and look down to the next level of the garden. The thing is, for all of you who are watching, it looks as if that pool has been there forever and it's perfectly clear and totally wonderful. However, 10 days ago...
Well, we emptied it and then cleaned out all the mud from it, of which there was about 4 inches of muck.
Of mud.
Yep. And then we pressure washed the sides, and it looked beautiful when we started to refill it. And it's been trying to refill ever since because it's been so dry.
But we love it and we swim in it, and when the frogs and toads have really got going, and the newts, we sort of wave to them as we swim past.
So I've brought you down into here because I think this is my favourite moment in the Arboretum, just because you've got this sea of frothy Queen Anne's lace. Is that the other name? Or cow parsley. And for us, this is a bit of a job, because around about July we have to cut all this down because it gets long and dead and sort of straggly. So just now, when everything is just at its early sort of late spring peak, I think it's particularly wonderful.
I think it's wonderful too, absolutely wonderful. But it doesn't last that long, does it? No.
There's definitely a moment here, and like all the best ones in gardening, it's a transient one.
Evanescent. Sometimes, of course, it coincides with the laburnum, doesn't it?
It does, and this year it just hasn't. I think probably because it's been such a cold spring. As you say, sort of even last night we're still having frosts, which usually they should be gone weeks ago.
Yep. But we're getting them every night, aren't we?
We are, yeah.
And of course, the whole Arboretum looks wonderful at this time of year. And look at that aesculus, sort of chestnut there.
Oh, absolutely.
Do you know what it is?
I looked it up last year because we got another one further down as well. That's another really fine aesculus.
American.
Yes.
Buck.
Yes.
Wheat. No.
Buckeye.
Buckeye. That's right.
Yeah.
Buckeye. This is a pretty good bit of bluebells, isn't it, Steve?
Oh, it's wonderful. Yes. So we have bluebell woods throughout the estate, and this is our little patch towards the end of the Arboretum into the spring garden.
I mean, what's so good about our bluebells is they're really so strong and blue. I mean, look at the colour of those bluebells there.
Yes, they are.
They're
They are
really
they are
good.
particularly dark blue and vibrant.
Yep. And apparently there are more white bells this year because the weather's been so foul that they thought that if they came up white, they might be protected from being
really?
eaten or anything by the frosts.
How interesting!
So
I
I
didn't know that that was the case.
Nor did I, but an ecologist told me that yesterday. Not that I believed it actually, because it seems to me they'd have had to start coming up white before they knew whether it's going to be frosty or not.
Yes, absolutely.
And the other thing that's so good is that lovely bush over there, isn't it? What's it called, Steve?
I think that's Excordia the bride.
And then also down here we have what used to be called rhododendron corner.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. So our
Not
soil
very
isn't
many.
particularly suited to
No.
rhododendrons.
And nor is our sensibilities, are they, Steve, yours and mine?
Some of the colours are good, but they are quite bright for us.
And actually the orange ones have died, haven't they? I think they have. I think they
yeah,
really,
it
really
was nothing
have.
to do with me.
What? Nor me.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting this important part of England's heritage by becoming a patron at mappertonlive.com.
Well, I hope you've really, really enjoyed this spring tour of Mapperton Gardens. We could have showed you a lot more, but we thought that was enough for now, do you think?
Absolutely. We didn't want to show you everything at once.
No. And we look forward to you all coming back and more for the next session, which is summer, when we will be showing the...
Well, I think we're going to look at the roses and flower beds a little bit more, because we haven't really looked at an awful lot today.
Well, we can't because they're not really there yet. So we hope you've enjoyed that. Please join us again, and we'll also show you more trees in leaf and in flower. This is the autumn film for Mapperton Gardens. Autumn means a mix of colour,
Yep.
mess,
Definitely, yeah.
billions of leaves,
So many leaves.
so much clearing up to do,
Yep.
and a wonderful sense of the continuity of the seasons. So that even when we are looking at all this, we're seeing the buds on all sorts of different plants,
Yeah,
getting
absolutely.
ready for next year,
Yeah.
we hope. But in this courtyard, see, what would you highlight as being, what would you highlight as being wonderful, and what would you highlight as being atrocious?
Well, it's been a really odd year because we haven't really had an awful lot of sort of colour. We've
Autumn
just
colour.
had the leaves come down all at once.
Yep.
And so we've spent the last few weeks tearing around after leaves. But one of the things that's still really nice here is our salvia, which is Involucrata Bethellii or Bethellii involucrata.
Well, it's one or the other. And frankly, it doesn't much matter which way around it is, because anybody who needs to know will know. And actually, over there, there's another good salvia.
Yeah. We've got
That
salvia
is
patens.
patens.
Yeah.
Oxford blue.
Yeah.
Because actually, there are two salvia patens, one after the Oxford mid blue, and one called Cambridge, which is light blue.
Well, also our cosmos hanging on in there, and the rose hips on the Rosa glauca particularly.
No, they're okay. In fact, they're wonderful.
Pretty, yeah.
And in fact, that shrub over there is my favourite shrub in the world, which is Schizophragma integrifolio, and it has little ivory-coloured bracts in the summer when it's really flowering, but they turn into these brown bracts. And what is interesting is that we're all beginning to look more at how gardens look in the winter. And there's a new book out called Winter Gardens, in
Yes.
which we feature for a whole chapter in a very distinguished way next to gardens who are far grander than ours. So it is actually great that we're in it.
It's a great book and it looks absolutely fantastic, and they came when we had a really good hard frost, and so it looks very sharp.
Yeah, not like today,
Where everything's a
which
bit
just
flat.
looks sort of late autumnal. These long tassels from the Itea ilicifolia are quite pretty. But really what you're looking at is texture and different greens. And then, of course, if we go and look at these wisterias, they haven't quite started changing colour.
No, they're sort of nearly there,
but-
and it's always one of the, because it's very short-lived, but it's beautiful.
And it's yellow.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic yellow. But actually, if we go along here, which we're going to go right along here, because there is a bit of colour at the end here. Oh my goodness, look what's come out. Now this is Iris unguicularis. It comes out in either October or November, in this case November.
Yeah.
And it will go on flowering intermittently in all these plants until March next year. This wonderful, strong, well, lilac-coloured, lilac-coloured iris. Every garden should have it. And actually, if we look out here, the colour's all right. There's colour in the copse over there, and there's colour in the beeches, in other words. There's colour in one of the horse chestnuts.
But it's wonderful first thing where you get the low light sunrise across there through those trees, and it just lights them. But unfortunately, we've got a day where we don't really have a great deal of sunshine.
Well, there's something trying to be sunny over
it's
there.
trying.
And then, of course, there's Rosa.
Oh, I can't remember that one.
It's either Nevada or... No, it's not.
It's not. No, it's the other one.
It's the other one. But you do want to see that it is still flowering. I mean, it's really making an effort to flower. It's the prickliest rose known.
Oh, it's amazing, yeah.
Hideously prickly. And totally wonderful.
And it grows about 10 feet a year.
Yeah,
it's absolutely unbelievable.
Have you pruned it this year?
I have, yeah.
Well,
I've been
who'd have thought it?
A little bit early, but I left all the buds because the ones I've been through where there have been buds, I just can't cut buds off. You just can't.
Shouldn't either.
They've got to stay.
Got to say. Got to say. And this is beginning to go.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And when you do it, you can do this, and they all tumble down. And it's one of my little joys in the winter. I sort of just pull the leaves down and make more mess for Steve. Well, I don't know, Steve. I mean, it's looking pretty good, really, considering that it's late, well, mid-November.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, the Japanese anemones look absolutely terrific.
The amazing thing with those is they're growing out of the wall.
I know.
Which seems completely impossible because there's nothing for them to grow off at all.
No, but just shows how porous the wall is.
True.
And then there are more nereines there, which are being eaten by something.
They are,
unfortunately. Don't you know? No, I don't either. And then there's viburnum. I guess it's farrerii, or maybe it's fragrans.
Yeah.
And it has the most wonderful, fragrant balls of scented flowers in early spring, followed by this tree whose name at this moment escapes both you and me.
Yeah.
But the important thing about it is it's full of buds for next year.
It is, yeah.
And I do think we should just point out these buds, and we'll give you the name a little bit later when it comes to us. But you can see all this is buds for next year, and it comes out with the most wonderful white flowers, and nobody has ever seen this particular shrub behaving like a tree as much as Drimys winteri. Well done. We've got it. Drimys winteri, and it's loving it.
It's absolutely enormous.
It's enormous. It's a tree.
Yeah.
Right, onwards and downwards. Let's go down to another area of both kind of autumn and leaves, and areas
leaves
that we've actually tidied up.
We have, yeah.
Oops.
So we actually mowed the lawn down here yesterday because the grass is growing still.
Oh no, it can't. And I think that what we do need to point out to our audience is that we have a late flowering lavender, the old-fashioned English lavender that flowers in October, November, and there it is in flower and smelling very sweet. Here we go. I think we ought to point out that, don't you?
Oh, absolutely amazing, yeah.
No, it's not called after the computer.
No, it's
Salvia
it's Amistad.
Dad, as opposed to
Amstrad.
And actually, I want to point out these because in the old days we used to cut them off.
Yes.
But now, because we're thinking about winter gardens all the time,
yeah.
we leave all the flower stems on seed stems on, so that when there's a frost, they look like little balls of ice.
Oh, they're
and
absolutely
frost.
amazing in a frost.
Do I see some empty pots?
Yes, indeed. Yeah,
That is really good. Because these pots are filled with red tulips in the spring, if our
tulips ever arrive.
well, if our merchant ever sends us them, and then they're filled with various plants, grey-leaf plants, and some brugmansia, or what we used, angel trumpets, in the summer, and then they have to be taken out and all cleared. And the other thing that's really important about all this area,
Yep.
with the old-fashioned lavender, is it's where the hedgehogs hibernate.
Oh, it is, yes.
So, whereabouts, was it here?
Yeah, it was. We had one just in
there.
here and then one at the other end last year, but our ones at home are still out,
Out and about.
Still out and about.
They're
so I
having
think
little,
they
they're
haven't
having
really
little
got there yet.
passagiatas, little walks every day.
Yeah. I'm feeding in the
Well,
evening.
that's really good. Well, you've just been doing a mighty clear up in the Orangery, is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I've cleared quite a lot. Got our citrus pots out here all summer, and then as soon as the first frosts sort of approach, we squirrel them away for the winter.
Squirrel is hardly the word. They're heavy, and they need about 3 people to push them in.
Yeah.
And they're not even lemons. They're sort of a mix between a lemon and a grapefruit.
Yes,
And I have to tell you, I have once sneaked down to get one for a gin and tonic because I had forgotten to buy any lemons.
And was it good?
No.
Oh.
It was all pith.
Yeah, absolutely.
And nothing inside.
They can be quite dry and pithy, I
Dry
think.
and pithy. My goodness, Steve, you made a difference to the Orangery. It really does look cared for. and there are the citruses. There are these absurd
one here.
things that sort of are a mix of a grapefruit and a lemon.
Made it into a bit of a jungle in here. It was quite open and empty in here after I had a good clear out and had a bit of a prune through the rose nephitos, which will flower in March?
February.
Yeah. So yeah, that's all been done now. But yeah, I've sort of enclosed it again afterwards with all these big pots.
And of course we have a climbing geranium. Well, other people have geraniums in pots. We have a climber that goes right up to the ceiling. In fact, it's looking wonderful now that it's had all this tender loving care. And in about 3 weeks' time, it'll need it again.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, we do have a bit of colour here, you know.
Oh,
I mean,
yes,
we do actually have Solanum rantonettii.
Yeah.
Could you remember that?
No.
And then we go to one of the best trees in the Fountain Court.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Over to you, Steve.
Yeah. So the interesting thing about the tulip tree we're heading towards. Well, part of it is actually we cleared, of course, all these leaves yesterday.
You didn't? Here?
Yeah. This lawn was mowed, and the leaves were all clear, and it looked very smart for about 20 minutes. But we've got this beautiful tulip tree in full colour here.
The thing about this one is I can't think why my father-in-law planted a tulip tree in the middle of a smallish formal garden like this. I mean, they're one of the great, huge forest trees of the eastern seaboard of America. But he did. And what is great is that it has flowers quite low down, so you can actually see the tulips, which normally you can't on tulip trees. But for a piece of, normally he planted so well.
Yeah,
I mean, he was really fine. I just don't think he knew what he was doing when he planted this.
It's a very large tree, and it's only going to get bigger. But it does have a lovely sort of habit in here, and it weeps wonderfully.
Absolutely beautiful. We're now going to go along the red wall border, which is where Susie Knight, who is going to be the head gardener from January onwards, when Steve goes off to pastures new. Susie has been responsible for getting all this colour into these borders, which they really didn't have. So we've got, Susie, what are these actually? I'm really bad on late summer flowering. Those are what, Rebecca?
Heleniums.
Heleniums?
Yes, and we planted some more in this year as well to give a bit of extra colour.
And this thing here is?
Penstemon.
Penstemon which? Is that burgundy or claret?
Possibly sour grapes.
Not sour
But-
grapes. I thought it was after a really decent drink. Then we've got the perennial wallflower bowls. No, what is it called, that one? That wallflower, iris
Bowls mauve.
Bowls mauve.
Yeah.
Bowls mauve. And onwards to more dreary old sedum, which actually is very good for bees. And Susie reckons she's going to plant a lot more bee-loving plants.
I am.
Like what?
Some more verbena that we've put in this year.
Yeah.
Some more asters.
Asters, you mean chrysanthemums or do you mean asters?
Asters. I think you call them Michaelmas daisies.
Oh, Michaelmas daisies,
Yeah.
yes. Sorry. Sorry.
And yeah, I'm going to have a look and think about what sort of pollinating plants to get in to give throughout the year.
Do you know, I think we ought to take a photograph of that thing because it has got something seriously wrong with
On
it.
the euphorbia, yes.
Yeah.
I've never seen it on a euphorbia before.
Do you know what it is?
No.
Well, that's no good. Nor do I. The red ball itself gives a little colour, and so does this vine, these beautiful leaves. I don't know what vine it is, do you?
No. I've really liked having the plectranthus here.
Well,
So
it looks lovely.
I've taken some cuttings, so I'll put some more in
Will you put more in?
next year.
Do you know, it's really lovely having somebody who cares about the colour schemes. Because I work on the principle of fauve, like Matisse and Leger, where any colours go with any other colours. And you
I like to get the
actually-
combinations
you,
right.
You do?
Yeah.
And will you be doing more getting the combinations
Yes.
right next year?
Yes, I will.
Like your scarf. Do you think you could do a little bit of the border on your scarf?
I could try and find something.
Go on. Then, of course, we've got Salvia
That's Salvia Royal Bumble.
Royal Bumble.
Royal Bumble.
Really? Did you plant it?
I did. Yes.
Great.
Yes.
And that's Gaura over there?
Yes.
Well, did you plant
I
that?
planted that, and I planted all this verbena as well.
Gosh, it looks lovely.
I like this.
This looks
bit.
wonderful. And so you can see that we're getting more colour and later colour.
Yes.
And thank you, Susie, very much for being prepared to come and do this job as head gardener. You're really going to enjoy it.
I am,
You may
thank
not
you.
enjoy all of it. Nobody's ever been known to enjoy the whole of Mapperton. And there is a sort of moment when you're head gardener at Mapperton when you think, goodness, can I really bring myself to go down another couple of layers? Or when you're right down, you've forgotten the secateurs. Goodness,
To come
can
all the way
I-
back.
And then there's an awful moment too when you think, oh, it's not just that there's a garden, there's an arboretum as well.
Yes. And I want to get down into the Arboretum as part of my plan and do a lot of work down there.
Good.
In the next year or so.
Good. And I know what that means. It means I'm going to have to work down there too.
Yes.
Iliagnus fricatii.
I'm not sure which one it is. I'm sorry.
The real problem is, I mean, you have a head gardener like Steve and you ask him something like, which Iliagnus is that?
Yeah,
And he hasn't got a clue.
No, I don't.
And I think I've forgotten. And if I say fricatii, it's wrong, isn't it?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm going to look blank. But
You're going to have to look it up.
My excuse is going to be that I'm not keen on anything that is variegated.
Well, you could hardly call that variegated. It's really yellow.
But that's my excuse.
Yeah, I know. And then that's looking pretty good, isn't it?
It is,
The smoke bush.
Yeah.
And then, of course, already this year's Mahonia belii, or is it called Mahonia belii still or something? It's got a new name, isn't it?
Oh.
I know. And it's so sweet scented, and it's coming out, you see.
And also we've got some useful red in it as well.
Yeah. Yep. We're looking at these yuccas here. These are the only plants that were here in 1956 when my father-in-law bought this house from Mrs. Labouchere. And they're different types. That's a big one, that's a little one. Going through them is the most grisly job. You have to wear goggles.
Specs, and gloves because the leaves
you get
can cut your
cut.
hands.
It's absolutely miserable.
Poke
But
you if you tried.
on the other hand, if you get it right,
They look much better once all that's gone.
I clearly haven't got it right. There we are. And they just come off like artichokes. And they're in flower.
Yeah.
Let's go on down here, just halfway down. the Arboretum. This particular Acer is looking absolutely
I
fantastic.
think this is just its absolute
Absolutely
peak. I
stunning.
don't think I've ever seen it look that good.
Bet you haven't been down the Arboretum enough at the right time to...
Well, no, perhaps not.
No, that's a tease.
Yeah, no, it's.
But it is looking terrific.
Yeah.
And it lasts about 3 days like that,
Yeah.
and it just drops.
Absolute tops, yeah.
So
it's
unless you
amazing.
happen to come at this time,
Yeah.
you don't get it. And these are more of these Euonymus oscillatus, and they've all dropped their leaves now.
But actually behind us as well, there's the liquid amber, which looks particularly.
Is that a liquid
amazing.
amber?
Oh yes, yeah.
It is a liquid amber.
Yeah.
Oh, is it? Good Lord, I thought it was something quite different.
I think it is.
No, you'll be right about that.
But it's a great size and a great shape again, and it really reflects the Acer, which again is a magnificent shape.
Wonderful. You sort of think there's not going to be a great deal more to say. And then you see the Acer griseum,
Absolutely,
which is stunning.
And just beginning to
To change.
But again, it's later than last year.
Oh, is it?
Because,
Is
last
it?
year by the end of October it was
Is
in
it gone?
colour. Yeah,
Really?
Yeah.
This Acer griseum is supposed to be the best Acer griseum in England or the UK.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Have
but
you looked
is-
it up? It's supposed to be on the list. I haven't, I'm afraid.
But it is.
Any of our audience, please, who like Acer griseum, could you look this one up and see if it's on the list of famous UK trees? Because I think it is.
I think it is a champion, whether it's just a southwest or whether it's.
No, it's a national.
But it is. And it's a
It is
wonderful shape,
wonderful.
and
It's
again it
such
captures.
a fine shape.
Yeah, and it captures the light.
Yeah.
Again, the low bright light through. It really shows off the redness of the bark.
And do you sneakily pull bits of the bark off from time to
I
time?
wouldn't dare.
I do, sometimes, not much.
Oh, well, you're allowed to.
No, I'm not really. But I did once find some garden visitors' children up it.
Oh, yes.
And I drew myself up to my full height and said, I have never seen garden visitors' children up the Acer griseum before, in my most schoolmarmish way I could imagine.
And did they get down fast?
They got down, not
Good.
fast.
Oh.
But it looks lovely, doesn't it? It's absolutely stunning.
Wonderful, yeah.
That's about it, isn't it? Pergola with
Yeah.
its things going. Oh, there is the lovely red rose, Park Director Riggers, and
Yes.
he's still flowering. Oh, he's flowering again, actually.
And great hips as well, actually.
Great hips.
Really
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
And-
It's probably about as much as we can do right now. Otherwise, we'll go on for an hour.
Yeah, and Madam Alfred Carrier, that rose is really
still
flowering again.
flowering.
So really, this is, hello Pussycat, you coming to see us too. You've got your autumn colours on too, haven't you? So really this is, I think we've taken you on a really good tour of Mapperton Gardens in the autumn, and there's far more colour than I had expected, and there's been far more diversity than I expected, and it's been
absolutely.
really wonderful. So next time
Yes.
we do this tour, I think you may have left
I
and
may have
gone
gone.
to different places,
Yeah.
sadly,
Yeah,
and we'll try and do it in frost and snow
that
in
would be wonderful.
January.
Yeah. Well, I get to watch it,
You get to watch it.
which would be great.
And Kitty, you'd like to be part of the film, wouldn't you? Of course you would.
Penny, who loves to be,
Yes,
to be
yes.
a part of it. One of four of our,
Yes,
our
one of the
Mapperton
four.
cats.
So, goodbye to you all. I really hope you enjoy looking at it, and hope you realise that this was rather a relaxed tour of Steve and I not quite remembering everything.